welcome to the Muslim Street. This is the Muslim Street podcast coming to you live every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern, and I think our that'd be 9 a.m. Pacific, if I'm doing my math right. And so we're here at the Muslim Street. You can find us at www.themuslimstreet.com and across all social media at the Muslim Street. Today we're going to jump into a number of topics. One in particularly just paying homage and recognition to an incident, a very violent political incident that happened in San Diego, California last week, where there was a first of all, it's the biggest mosque in San Diego. I actually visited their art back in 2006, about 20 years ago. It's the Central Mosque. It has hundreds of students. These are young kids, K through 12, going to school there. And two white supremacists shows up in the middle of the school day, heavily armed, and they decided they want to shoot the school up. Fortunately, the kids were trained in a active shooter alert class, and the shooters couldn't find them. Hundreds of them. And then there were three of the elders and one on security that was at the school who attempted to stop the shooters, and they were shot dead. Three Muslim men. And then the two shooters go out to their car. One of the shooters shoots the other one in the head and then kills himself. Whatever we make of that, it is the climate, it is the response art that we're going to talk about a little bit about today, but I want to kind of set this up. Of course, we're here at the Muslim Street. I am Malik Aziz, editor-in-chief of the Muslim Street. And again, you can find us at www.themuslimstreet.com. And this is Art Mobley, my co-host, who is a national Association of Black Journalists founding member. Quite a task when we talk about independent Black journalism in this country. Art, yeoman's effort there. And so if Lance, if you can go to cut one, and that'd be Adam Clayton Powell. Let's kind of want to set this up, Art.
Okay. Good morning.
Lance will bust in with Adam Clayton Powell here in a minute. Yeah, here we go. So Lance, here we go.
Martin Luther King is going through an agonizing reappraisal. He doesn't belong to the decadent, aristocratic colonials of the civil rights movement.
Who are the decadent aristocratic?
Well, I don't want to call names, but the names are obvious. Martin Luther King has done a yeoman job, and he's got the guts to keep on doing it. And once he knows what Black power really means, he doesn't know what it means.
What does it mean?
It means dignity. It doesn't mean violence. It means integrity. It doesn't mean anti-white. It means pride in being Black. It means you're willing to cooperate with your white brother and sister if they're going to cooperate with you in terms of giving you the same things that they have. That's what it means.
But you suggest that he might be going through an agonizing reappraisal that will wind him up where?
Third phase of Black Revolution.
And does that mean casting aside his principles of nonviolence?
None of us have cast them aside. I don't think Stokely has either. This means that we have cast aside that we're not going to let nonviolence go all the way. That when nonviolence comes to the point of violence, we're going to meet violence with violence for our manhood.
When Stokely...
Not because we're Black power, but for our manhood, that's all.
Well said, Art Mobley, from Congressman Adam Clayton Powell Jr., who was a congressman out of Harlem, New York, passed away in 1971, replaced by a reactionary by the name of Charles Rangel. Now, I wanted to couch this topic of the mosque shooting and political violence with a statement from a sister who is a Muslim. Her name is Sahar Aziz. She is a leading intellectual on this issue. Sahar is a professor of law and also in the Islamic studies space at Rutgers University. And Sahar writes, as relationship to the mosque attack, how many more mosques have to be targets of violent hate crimes, whether mass shooters or vandalism or arson? Sahar goes on to say, before American liberals acknowledge that Islamophobia is a deeply entrenched form of structural racism in our society. Sahar goes on to say that she has spent over 2 decades advocating, researching, writing, and speaking about the origins and dangerous consequences of Islamophobia and even more dangerous results of ignoring it. Here, if you get a copy of this book, and I highly recommend it, you can find it on Amazon, The Racial Muslim, When Racism Squashes Religious Freedom. She goes on to say in her book, it explains the history, politics, and causes and consequences of anti-Muslim racism and Islamophobia. Please read and learn, and you will understand why it's such a threat to millions of Americans who identify as Muslims. She is an expert in, again, in this area. Want to make sure that you go to Amazon and get a copy of this book. So, Art, I wanted to couch Sahar, if you can go back to the main screen, Lance. I wanted to couch Sahar Aziz's piece and her academic framing of why we see this political violence aimed at Muslims in this country, and essentially with Adam Clayton Powell connecting Black Power and its third phase of it has moved from nonviolence to we would deal with what we're going to deal with. And I think we've lost Art for a minute there. No problem.
Yes.
So as you can see, and thanks a lot, Lance, for pulling up Adam Clayton, Congressman Powell's statement about the third phase of Black Power that Martin Luther King, Dr. King, was being forced and transitioned to away from just his nonviolent movement that the Black Power movement had emerged, and it was on the scene, and it was a whole different kind of party. And for Muslims to understand the political equation of what Malcolm called self-defense, right? Meaning that Malcolm said, I think in a quote, that we're peaceful people, we're Muslims, we love everybody who love us, but if you put one hand on us, send them to the cemetery. And it's essentially where we're going to have to arrive as Muslims in this country, that we're just going to be laying around and allowing white supremacists or anybody else to roll up in a mosque while the kids are going to school, or roll up in a mosque while the people are in prayer and shooting us down. It ain't working like that. All right. The other thing, as we get Art back, is that we have to understand the landscape of the white supremacists. They are cowards. They have always been cowards. They were cowards when they emerged as the pro-slavery police force. That's where they emerged from. They were slave catchers. That was their first jobs. They emerged as a defenders of white power, as the defenders of their status quo, a status quo that has not changed. The hierarchy of the white power status quo may have been shuffled around by the different white ethnic groups, be they Italian, be they Ashkenazi Jews, or be they Irish. But we do see that the same pecking order vis-a-vis Black people are still the same. They have introduced, since the United States government declared war on Islam, and that was the beginning of the first Gulf War with George Bush, the daddy, coming out of the Reagan administration, that Islam is the new enemy, replacing the Soviet Union, which fell, right? And the military-industrial complex always need a boogeyman, always need it had the big bad bear for 40 years, and then what emerged after that was Islam. So their deification of themselves and uh, uh, the dehumanizing of Muslims throughout the world sets up the basis for not only these wars against Islam, but also for their citizens to walk into a mosque and shoot down kids. Walk into the mosque while men and women are in prayer and shoot them down. We've seen instance after instance after instance of it. What we have not seen, Art, is that these white supremacists will roll up into a black community, be it on the west side of Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, where there's mosque, be there in Philadelphia or in Brooklyn, New York, with this little foolishness, because they know that they will be dealt with. So they know who to pick on. That's why they're cowards. They pick on the immigrant Muslims who don't know white people like we know white people. That's just that clear. We know them, right? So we encourage people to study the work of Zaha Aziz. We also encourage people to study what Congressman Powell called the third phase of the Black Power movement, and that we will return violence with violence.
Well, absolutely. Had a little power outage there that caused a bit of a problem. But, I guess they got it corrected before I could. I hope everybody's doing great today. And I didn't get a chance to hear the Adam Clayton Powell quote in its entirety, but I'm sure that Adam's words were always, on point for the most part. But that was real tragic about the San Diego situation, man. I can't believe that we still are so much involved and vulnerable to these kinds of attacks. But we certainly are. Malcolm once said that the history of unpunished violence against our people clearly indicate that we must prepare to defend ourselves, or we will continue to be defenseless people at the mercy of a ruthless and violent racist mob. And that goes for not only Muslims that are in this country, but African Americans too. I mean, look at what happened at the Christ Emmanuel Church there on the East Coast. And what's happened in the supermarket up in the Northwest there, where same elements go in because they have these phobias. These guys who attacked the mosque in San Diego had a little hit list, and blacks and Hispanics and a few other people were on that list. Muslims were certainly there too, but for people to feel that they somehow have the proximity and the right to claim this land that they stole from native people and indigenous people to defend as their own, and essentially say, hey, nobody else belongs here but us, is very, very absurd, but also reminiscent of something else that's going on right now, and that's what's going on with Zionism. And so it's a Zionization of the culture here in America, and we need to understand what's going on, and we'll be better able to deal with it from a defensive standpoint, but also just understanding and looking for those signs that will give us some clue as to what's coming next.
So, yeah, and also we had up on the screen while you had the power outage, Art, a book that really addresses this environment of Islamophobia by a scholar by the name of Sahar Aziz. The name of it is The Racial Muslim. Just to go over her credentials, we're going to have to get Sahar on the show. I'll reach out to her over here in the next week or so. She's professor of law and Middle East legal scholar and chancellor's social justice scholar at Rutgers University of Law, and also founding director of the Center for Security on Race and Rights. Because we want to give a kind of like a social stratification analysis to Islamophobia, to tie its tentacles into, as you did with this, which I thought was a perfect analysis, and that was the Zionization of American thought right now. Take. This is ours, and you didn't know. That kind of thing. Right. So you're right on point there. So we'll get Sahar on the show. She's a contributor, a consistent contributor to the Muslim Street social media. So that we can further, this discussion around this, and I have to call it what it is: political violence. They have political intentions, and as you said too, Art, want to make sure that we don't leave this in the space of only an attack on Muslims or in the space of Islamophobia, because this has been their drill. Talking about the white supremacist drill, since forever. We've seen them, bomb black churches in Birmingham in the 1960s, where those I think 3 or 4 sisters, three were killed, young girls, and one of them actually a next door neighbor to the great Angela Davis, right. And we also saw it down in a church down in the south. I think it was Dylan Roof walks in. The people literally prayed with him, and then he shot them one by one. And this, so they don't care, right? It's the same approach. Go ahead.
Right, and the Zionization that I'm talking about, and I label it that because it's kind of a reaction to where they learned it from. They learned it from this culture, the eugenics movement, and also that was an outgrowth of just the terror movement, that was an outgrowth of the African wars that took us into slavery and enslaved Africans on the continent. It's a continuation. They are continuing to assault African people in this culture, and for people to try and deny that this is changing or it's evolving into something that's better for us. No, it's not better for us. You want to go back. You're talking about MAGA. You're talking about Make America Great Again, and you really want to reverse yourself and go back into a status where terror is okay. That's what MAGA means. It means it's okay to attack Muslims. It's okay to attack Black people. It's okay to attack indigenous people at will, wherever you feel like it. That's your comfort zone, is to do that. And white people need to understand who they are, so that they can address each other, because you're trying to leave it to us, and we don't have the patience for it any longer. And regardless of what you want to roll back right now, we're definitely not ready to go with you. And we have a very strong contingent of young people who are also very aware of who you are and what you're doing. Your tactics might have changed, times might have changed, but the conditions are the same. They're exactly the same as they were, and they always have been. So anyway, I know we were supposed to be talking about Cuba.
Yeah, we'll roll to that in a second. I just want to make a note on Dylan Roof, Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church down in Charleston, South Carolina, June 17, 2015, during a late evening Bible study. And it was just weird about that whole situation, but not really weird to us. After he mowed down our people in that church, and the police picked them up, they asked him was he hungry, and they took him to a fast food restaurant. I think it was McDonald's or Wendy's, so he could
Sure, yeah,
hamburger,
McDonald's.
a hamburger and a Coke and some fries on the way to jail. Yeah, this is the way they do. Yeah, that was.
They reward each other. They do their little things and try to create those rewards along the way because they are all vested in that kind of activity. And for us to pretend like they've outgrown it or they've moved on or they've changed, these are the same people. I am old enough to remember people being water hosed and beat with sticks, dogs suck on them, and being killed regularly in the South during the civil rights movement. And I know that those people who were doing those things, those people are still alive too, just like I am. So, just like we are, they have not gone anywhere. We're talking about the same generation. This isn't some old time ancestral thing we're talking about. We're talking about the people who were alive along with us and who are still alive today, who have maybe just regressed or resuscitated, or recessively moved their their demeanor, just an increment, But they're still with us, man. They're still with us.
Yeah, and before we move to Cuba, real quick, Art, just a couple things I want to mention on your conversation. You brought up "Make America Great Again," MAGA. That term originated with Ronald Reagan during his campaign for presidency in 1980. A tidbit there: Ronald Reagan graduated at a college in Central Illinois called Eureka College. Eureka College offered me a football scholarship in the late 1970s to come and compete to be the quarterback. It was an all-white team. I get down there and I started as a freshman. Right in time, I was doing good. Right in time, I made a couple mistakes. So let me tell you something. Ronald Reagan is running by the next year. He's governor of California and he's running for president. He's coming to Eureka College. We're alumni, right? I started as a freshman, first black quarterback in the history of that no good school. We know Ronald Reagan played football at Eureka. They made sure that I would not be on the campus my sophomore year. They put me on social probation. I don't even know what that is, So they knew they had to get me off the campus if Ronald Reagan was coming to that little POC center. And when I left there, as I'm driving out, I said, I'll never step foot on this campus again. I'm a man of my word. They send me emails all the time. Oh, alumni, get the alumni. I said, oh, yeah, the football guy. No, we won't be doing that. The last tidbit before
they're lost.
Yeah, exactly. The last tip before we move to Cuba, we talked about, where you and I and on this show have consistently discussed the Democratic Party and the Republican Party being simply a choice for Black people, rearranging the seats on the deck of the Titanic. It is no different. All right. We saw 74% of Black men in the last election vote for Kamala Harris, who was pro-Zionist. And we also saw 23%, the highest, I think, since the 1960s, vote Republican, these Black MAGA crowd, right? And these buffoons on both sides, but really the Black MAGAs, they thought Trump, and they totally read that room wrong. I knew he would fuck it up in 60 days, and it didn't even take him that long. But they thought he was going to ride high, and do a little thing over here for Black people and all this kind of stuff. And they bet on the wrong man. So anyway, and that's not to say that had they moved over to Kamala Harris, that things would have been different vis-a-vis Palestine. It would not have. Vis-a-vis Iran, it would not have. So
he might have not. She might have not fired half a million Black women. Coming in. But
no, she wouldn't have did that.
Yeah, but she definitely would have done the same thing that's going on in the what they call the Middle East right now. So,
which begs the question: if that was at stake, and those stakes were very high, why wouldn't she come out in support of Palestine? Just a dumb political move that cost her the White House, and this gaslighting that goes on with oh, you should have voted.
I bet she won't do it again because Israel is dead. Israel is dead. Yeah. Iran has put a foot all in their ass. And I really want to talk about that too, but I know we got Cuba on the agenda.
Yeah, and I think and there's some relationship between relationship between Cuba and Iran. There's no question about it. And I'll open up this discussion in two ways. I'll ask Lance after I make this quote this, from a post that I did in the middle of last week. And Lance, if you can put that video up, cut 2 of Code Pink. I said this, Art. I said, Iran says to Cuba, warm up in the bullpen. We kick their backsides. That's what happened, right? And then Cuba responds, we ready. All right. We ready because the Cuban Revolution in 1959 fought off Western imperialism, and it won 90 miles away from the United States shores.
Yeah.
That's
well, if one person dies in Cuba, that's one too many over this kind of nonsense and reaction to this imperialism and what this country does. And I believe that Black people and brown people and those people in this country who are sensitive to what is going on in Palestine and Gaza, Iran, Cuba, and anywhere else, people of color or people who look like us are enduring. We need to stand up in this country and stop this country from going there, from doing that kind of activity right off the shores, right here in America. We can stop this. This is what we did in the whole Vietnam War. I mean, Black people brought a halt to the Vietnam War in this country. We inspired those people that came out later. They followed in the footsteps of the Black Power movement, the civil rights movement. They came out, the little hippies came out. Y'all know who you are. You came out and you addressed what we were addressing. And that was how we stopped the Vietnam War. Otherwise, we'd still be fighting that war. We have to stop allowing imperialism administered with tax dollars from this country being utilized to destroy other countries. And it is coming to an end. Every war since World War II that the U.S. has become involved in, and not only not even been technically wars, they've lost. They've lost every one of those altercations, police actions, whatever they want to call them. They got their ass whooped. They got their ass whooped in Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, and you're going to keep
Somalia.
Huh?
Somalia, late 90s under Clinton, Black Hawk Down.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they don't learn. They think that they have this superior military intelligence thing going on, and they're going to F around and find out. And that's essentially what is happening and will continue to happen around the world. But people here need to stand up. People need to get sick of it because it's cost this country $8 trillion. Spent $8 trillion just trying to fight the wars that Netanyahu staged and drug the U.S. into. $8 trillion that could have been used to fix roads in your community, to enhance affordable housing, do things that give you health care and a myriad of other things that you could have used in your community. So we have to understand these are real costs. This country is broke because of this kind of activity. And it's up to us to say, hey, we need to refocus, reallocate where we're using these resources. Israel should not get another dime. In fact, Israel should begin a payback program to reimburse the U.S. for the $8 trillion that is gone their way. People say, oh, well, we're not going to send another dime to Israel. No, you need to get your money back. You need to get every dime that you can back from those people, because they have it, because they've been able to exponentially grow that money, and they're using it to bribe Congress people in this country. You're gonna get tax dollars and then use it to bribe.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, as we move to the station identification, you listen to the Muslim Street. You can find us at www.themuslimstreet.com. As Lance,
pause for station identification.
Yeah, I always want to do that.
Yeah. No, I can tell.
Lance is bringing up cut two as we move further into this discussion art around Cuba. One of the things that you mentioned was the anti-war movement, the underground, when you saw the white left moving into that space, grabbing their confidence and power from the Black radical tradition movement of
right on.
Revolutionary Action Movement, the Black Panther Party, and Muhammad Ali. So we'll see more of that. As we move forward, the corrugation of the white left, along with the Black radical tradition, to oppose these wars, and serves as the basis for the anti-war protests. Lance, if you could cue up cut two and Medea Benjamin or Cold Pink.
Currently, the Trump administration has decided that what Cuba really needs right now, after decades of economic strangulation, CIA assassination attempts, sabotage, invasion, sanctions, blackout, shortages, and more than half a century of failed regime change policy, is the indictment of 94-year-old revolutionary icon Raul Castro. The United States and Cuba did not have to be enemies. In fact, just 10 years ago, the two countries were normalizing relations. I remember being at the 2015 Summit of the Americas in Panama, and everybody was so delighted when Presidents Barack Obama and Raul Castro shook hands. It was the first major public interaction between leaders of the two countries in decades. And Obama said, "The United States is not interested in being prisoners of the past." Raul Castro thanked him for taking steps towards normalization and called him an honest man. The opening was a win-win for both countries. There was an influx of U.S. tourists, a flourishing of private businesses, and an opening for civil society. But then came Donald Trump. He sent relations spiraling downward once again. And fast forward to today, now we have the indictment of Raul Castro for allegedly ordering the 1996 shoot-down of Brothers of the Rescue plane that left 4 men dead. It was indeed a tragic and regrettable incident, not only because of the lives lost, but also because it hardened U.S. policies toward Cuba for years to come, and it paved the way for Congress to codify the blockade into law. But it's critical to understand the context. The group's leader, Jose Basulto, was a veteran of the disastrous 1961 Bay of Pigs invasion. He had a long history of anti-Cuban militancy. He openly admitted that he was trained as a terrorist by the United States. The group repeatedly violated Cuban airspace and dropped anti-government leaflets over Havana. Basulto himself declared after one such mission, "We want confrontation." Between 1994 and 1996, the Cuban government documented 25 serious violations of Cuban airspace by planes associated with this group, Brothers to the Rescue. Cuba repeatedly warned the U.S., the FAA, international aviation authorities that these flights were not only illegal but dangerous. And recently declassified U.S. records show that high-level U.S. officials understood the risks. In fact, just 1 month before the shootdown, they explicitly warned of the, quote, worst case scenario that one of these days the Cubans will shoot down one of these planes. They said these flights could only be seen as further taunting of the Cuban government. While there's disagreement over whether the planes were ultimately shot down in Cuban or international airspace, the pilots had reportedly filed a false flight plan and approached Cuban airspace despite direct warnings from Cuban controllers. The hypocrisy of indicting Raul Castro nearly 30 years later is staggering, given this long history of anti-Cuban extremism operating from U.S. soil to wreak havoc against the island. In 1976, Terrorists bombed Cuban Flight 455, killing 73 people on board, including the entire Cuban national fencing team. In 1997, a 32-year-old Italian tourist was killed in a hotel bombing aimed at destroying Cuba's tourism industry. And yet the men implicated in these horrible acts, including Orlando Bosch and Luis Posada Carriles, were protected by U.S. authorities and allowed to live freely in Miami. And let's remember, the same government now pursuing charges against Raul Castro has itself been carrying out deadly strikes on alleged drug smuggling boats in the Caribbean and the Pacific, strikes that have killed at least 193 people with no transparency or due process. You know, this new indictment is simply a cynical escalation of the long efforts to force regime change in Cuba. Will Washington try to use it as a pretext to invade the island and, quote, extract Raul Castro as it did with Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela? Will it once again send U.S. troops to occupy Cuba as it did in 1898, 1906, and 1912? Will it ignite a civil war? We have no idea. But we do know this. Despite unfounded allegations to the contrary, Cuba poses no threat to the United States. And the United States has absolutely no right, zero, to interfere in Cuba's internal affairs. Raul Castro is 94 years old. Let him live out the rest of his years in the country where he was born and the country for which he fought his entire life. Instead of tightening the blockade and pushing Cuba towards greater poverty, instability, migration, and despair, the United States must abandon its failed policy of domination, lift the sanctions, and allow Cubans, not Washington politicians or Miami hardliners, to decide Cuba's future. So apparently the Trump administration has decided that what Cuba really needs right now, after decades of economic...
Okay, thanks a lot, Lance. That's Medea Benjamin, Cole Pink. Art, in response to her, the United States government under John F. Kennedy launched a economic blockade against Cuba that's still in place, putting a stranglehold on their economy. In addition to that, according to Fabian Escalante, the former head of Cuba's state security department, during the Castro administration, there were over 638 failed assassination attempts by the United States government.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned blockade, because there's a difference between a blockade and sanctions. They actually had a quarantine around Cuba, and U.S. warships were in the Atlantic blocking the delivery of any kind of trade or anything else to Cuba from any other place. And then those countries that did get information and supplies or materials to Cuba, they were sanctioned. They were severely sanctioned. And so you can't do business here anymore. You can't do business with these countries and NATO countries. They had all kinds of nonsensical things to punish people. So they were trying to strangle and starve the Cuban people, and still are to this day. And I was in Cuba, I've been to Cuba a few times since, of course, during all of this. And it is a beautiful place, a beautiful country, beautiful people. And I think they could be an example to the rest of the world. I would love to see the Cuban medical structure be able to intervene directly in Congo and in Sudan to help solve the Ebola crisis that's going on there, because I know that they can administratively handle that. They did that before when they had the outbreak in Liberia and Sierra Leone and Guinea. And they have the capacity to do it. Not only do they have the military means, as they intervened in Angola to help the Angolan people fight off the South Africans who were supported by the U.S. as usual. And with that 400, South Africa sent 400 tanks into Angola to try and do what, just essentially destroy the Angolan revolution. And Cuba was there. It took them 9 hours by plane, got there, and got off and supported and helped. Of course, the Angolan people did that themselves, but it was good to have support from Cuban people. So Cuba's that kind of heroic African, Pan-African ally that is sorely needed. And we as Pan-Africanists in this country and Black people in this country and Muslims in this country need to be supportive of Cuba.
Yeah, and in the words of the great late Omar Abadeli of the Republic of New Africa, under the Castro administration, Cuba and the Cuban Revolution sent blood and guts to Africa, specifically on the frontline states, even Che Guevara on his knees in the jungles, fighting back the Western imperialism. One fun note, Art, I'd like to talk to you about this because I was headed to Cuba back in 2023. That trip got in the way because of Donald Trump's changed policy. We know during Barack Obama, the travel policy was open, as you saw Medea Benjamin talk about the increase in tourism. I want to ask you just some of your anecdotal remarks, and also I don't want to forget Marco Rubio, who's a white Cuban who comes from the aristocrats who were kicked out by Castro. Their businesses nationalized, right? He took their businesses and nationalized them, right? And they ended up in Miami with apartheid rights vis-a-vis the Haitians, meaning that any white Cuban who steps 1 foot on American soil, there's a whole parade of infrastructure there to support their march to citizenship. They've taken over Miami. Marco Rubio, now Secretary of State. This is on his wish list to have the Cuban Revolution overthrown. And I want you to remark on that. But also, when you're on the ground there, I want the audience to listen to this. The literacy rate in the United States of America is 79%. That's the adults functional literacy rate. The adult functional literacy rate in Cuba, 99.7.
Absolutely. And, just to flash back real quick, Libya's was even higher than what was happening here in the United States. But Cuba, everybody in Cuba has a PhD. I'm down in Cuba, and whether I'm in a restaurant, I'm listening to musicians, or I'm riding in a taxi, the drivers, the cooks, the waitresses, the musicians all have PhDs. They haven't had time to do anything else but go to school in Cuba, and education is free, and they take advantage of it. That's why you have so many doctors, not only now, I'm not talking about just PhDs, but I'm talking about medical doctors. You have such a proficient system in every one of those categories down the line. You've got super professionals in Cuba, and Cuba is exporting that to the rest of the Caribbean, or were exporting that until, of course, U.S. sanctions says, well, you can't, if you take doctors from Cuba, or you take in people who are coming from Cuba to help your system, you're going to be sanctioned for that. So they're trying to curtail that. That's the kind of granular nonsense that America is forcing on everybody else throughout the Caribbean, and denying them the support of the Cuban expertise that runs their hospitals, runs their systems, their educational systems, and everything else. So it is at least Obama's vision of, hey, let's open up Cuba, let's have some business going on there, made some sense. Even though it's a totally capitalist ideal, to say, hey, let's open up Cuba so we can exploit that situation and make money off that situation. That's really what it was. But it did make more sense than to continue sanctions and continue the nonsense that's going on now. In Cuba, I'll say this and I'll let you go, or let it go back to you. I love the fact that you could leave your belongings, your purse, your bag, your clothes, sitting out on the beach and come back 3 days later and nobody has touched it. Mm. Cubans don't steal. They don't bother your stuff. You know, if it's not yours, don't touch it. That's how. Yeah, it's just a wonderful place. It's a neat place to be, very unique place, and I will definitely defend Cuba to the hill.
So pre-Castro Cuba, and that'd be the Cuban Revolution in 1959. There was a heavy Zionist influence that controlled the garment industry, the banking industry, the retail industry, and one other industry. All illegal gambling in the casinos. And it was set up by, a lot of people think that La Cosa Nostra, the Italian mafia and the five families that were set up initially by Lucky Luciano in New York City, or the commission, it was the formation of the mafia. They're wrong. The original mafia is known as Murder, Inc. And it was set up by Zionist Jews. In particular, you ever heard of these names? Maya and Bugsy Siegel, Maya Lansky. These are the people whom were controlling Cuba prior to, and the whole casino and illegal gambling and the prostitution down in Havana when Fidel Castro and Che Guevara rolled off of those hills with 10,000 men and say this party's over. All right. So you have this white Cuban aristocratic influence, the Marco Rubio ancestry, and then you have this influence of the Zionists. They want Cuba back, and we know how they're running the Trump administration. How much is this going to play into that?
Well, the racist bastards that they are, they had brown people, black people at the bottom, and Cuba was known as a brothel. One of the largest brothels in the world, but definitely the largest brothel. The whole island was a brothel in the Western Hemisphere. We used to see on TV shows and cartoons when we were a kid in this country, people talking about, oh yeah, we're going down to Havana and we're doing this and that. And what happens in Havana stays in Havana. That was the original quote. But business people were, leaving their wives and running down to Cuba on these junkets. And it's because they had forced prostitution. And Castro and Che broke all of that up. The Cuban people broke all of that nonsense up. And I was happy to see when I went there that they still were hurting from that kind of exposure. And so much so that they didn't even allow the local Cuban people to be in hotels after a certain time in the evening, and would restrict them from even having contact with visitors. So they do that to preserve the dignity of the Cuban people, and they do that to this day. So we cannot allow Marco Rubio, Trump, and anybody else. We can't continue to just be bystanders in this and say, oh, look at it, like we're watching a television show or movie. This is real life, what's going on in Iran. Those are real bombs and munitions that are being dropped on people. People are dying, and they're doing so on the watch of people in this country right now because we're too flat-footed. So,
and one of the things that I want to bring to the attention of people who draw the conclusion that the Americans and Donald Trump would not send his military in to overthrow the government and take control of Cuba, as they did Venezuela and other places down throughout the history of America, which has always been, wars of resources. Libya had oil, Sudan had oil, Somalia, Venezuela, oil, the Strait of Hormuz, right? Now, one of the things you have to understand about the takeover of Cuba and maybe some of the things that's playing in their minds. I was just down in Panama City, Panama, for a week just a few weeks ago, and I was shocked of the Zionist influence in Panama. If they were ran out of Cuba in 1959 by Castro, so here's where I want to set this up at. We know there's no oil in Cuba, right? America doesn't need any sugar or tobacco plantations. Now, what we saw in Panama City under Manuel Noriega was a tyrant who ran the country on behalf of the United States. He literally was the point of contact for the drugs coming in from Pablo Escobar in Colombia through the Panama Canal
into talking about Trujillo
to the United States. Mm-hmm. And it was Manuel Noriega, who was the Americans and the CIA's man and point of contact on that issue. And boy, would they love to have a outpost 90 miles away. And when I say they, I'm talking about the United States government and the players, when the drug dealers. All right, Ronald Reagan was a drug dealer. His point of contact was Oliver North. That they would love to have Cuba and Havana, 90 miles south of Miami, to run drugs into this country.
Absolutely. They've been doing it forever, and that is what they do. These bases around the world are nothing but lily pads and places to hop and stop and bring drugs, bring contraband, weapons into the country. They also use it for organs that where do you think all these organs come from that are being implanted in people at $100,000 a pop?
You're not saying that the Americans trans party going all the way didn't stay in Afghanistan all that time because of those poppy fields. You're not really saying that, are you? You're not saying that the Americans stayed in Afghanistan all that time because of poppy fields, are you?
Well, yeah, they actually did. The opium is another big money maker, but they also were stealing organs and the little girls and little boys and that kind of nonsense. They're trafficking everything. And we have to understand that that's the culture. That's the culture. And if we dug beneath the surface, and when we do dig beneath the surface, we'll find these things to be radiantly true. And that's why they don't want to talk about Epstein. And you know it. You got that grin on your face.
Hey, listen, going back to Panama when I was there a few weeks ago, I had a driver taking me around, to the old quarters and stuff like that. Yep. And I saw a street sign that said Israel Avenue. I was like, all right. And then I saw another one, Tel Aviv Avenue. And then I asked him, I said, what part of town is this? He said, this is Jew City. And then the mayor of Panama City, his name is Mayor, just like you would say mayor, that's his first name, a Jew in his 30s, some tech superstar. They're literally, and I asked the driver, what's going on here? He's like, yeah, man, they run this whole place.
Well, of course they do. They run they're experienced in those trades. They were the gangsters, as you said before, and they have not evolved from that to straight corporate business, paying taxes and doing the right things. I mean, what do you think? I mean, they still do this. It's just under the surface. So again, nobody is naive enough to believe that these things have disappeared. But the stupidest of people anywhere, as they say in New York, and Scurv could relate to this, stupid, stupid people. We got some people who are New York stupid, who don't understand what these people are doing. When you live in a kleptocracy, stupid. That's what it is.
Straight stupid.
Nobody says stupid like New Yorkers. It kills me to hear that. But these people are anti-Kemetic, okay? These are
Yes.
anti-Kemetic people. They have been for thousands of years, and they are still pushing the same agenda to essentially diminish and bury anything Kemetic and replace it, or try and replace it with themselves as being the architects of Kemetic culture and everything that Kemetic people have represented throughout the world. And we're not going to tolerate it anymore. We're not going to give them this pass to continue this, because our young people are too smart. They've gotten very astute. They understand this game, and they ain't playing along with it either. It's awareness, and that's all it takes. All it takes is awareness and organization, and you can win. You got them defeated.
Yeah, so I referenced the Zionist control of the mafia or organized crime in this country. Read a book called Murder Inc. By Burton Turkis to understand Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel, etc. Also, the connection from Havana to the setting up of Las Vegas. I mean, who do you think set Las Vegas up? It was Murder Inc. It wasn't the La Cosa Nostra. The Italians came in at the play of the Zionist Jews who are the architects. And when you say Murder Inc., these were the original assassins.
Well, they came in to entertain. I mean, Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack, and they were just entertaining.
So last few minutes of this segment, Lance, if you can go to cut 4, we had a passing of a great friend, a Muslim that I've known since we came into Islam together. I shouldn't say that. He was born Muslim. His name is Idris Mahmoud, out of Chicago, who later found his way to Hollywood, where he was heavily involved in an acting career. And he passed away yesterday. And we got the news early this morning. Fantastic brother. I just want to, mention him on the Muslim street. And I say that we didn't come into Islam together. He was born Muslim. I was talking to him one day. I never forget. I was talking to him one day just a few years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, about Hajj. And he said, yeah, I made Hajj when I was 11. And as Art pointed out, the Hajj is going on, currently as we're in the month of the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, coming up on the day of Arafat, which will be next week. I'm sorry, day of Arafat, which will be this week, Wednesday, where the slaughter of animal, particularly lambs or sheep, and this meat is given to poor people and shared amongst the Muslims throughout the world. It's called Qurbani. I usually send my Qurbani to Africa because there's just enough fat people in the United States. I don't see the point of it. So historically, I've sent my money over there. I used to slaughter here. And when I'm in Africa during Dhul Hijjah, I will slaughter over there. But know that I purchased 2 lambs that will go to a very poor village in Africa, and these people will eat.
Hey, brother, can we mention the fact that the Greater Israeli Project, the Greatest Israel Project, will cause the encompassing of Medina, not Mecca, but right on the border of Mecca. That's the southern border of the proposed Greater Israel Project. And I think that Muslims around the world need to be on their toes and need to be paying attention to this strategy. Also, there's a huge movement to relocate to Argentina on the part of a lot of the Zionists right now.
Yes, absolutely. So again, I want to close out the show with paying homage to our brother Idris Mahmoud. I talked about Idris. Said he went to Hajj. His mom and dad took him to Hajj when he was 11 years old. So he is Hajj Idris Mahmoud, who has passed away. Again, he leaves behind a daughter. A very righteous brother. We would go back and forth all the time in fun, laughter over food, and argument over discussion, and have rigorous debate. yeah, and they come out laughing at each other like it should be. None of this is personal. We're all on the same team. And Idris Mahmoud, a stand-up brother, budding actor. When I found out and I'll leave this on here as we close out the show. I'm sitting on my couch back in during the pandemic, and I'm just watching Netflix, and I see a bar scene, like a restaurant scene, and I see Idris, and I had no idea he had went to Hollywood, but he's in the movie. Man, I called him up, man. I didn't even say salam alaikum to him. I just started laughing. He started laughing back. I said, bro, I just saw you on TV in a movie. So his brother was a righteous brother. He will be missed. Originally from Chicago, moved to Hollywood to pursue his dreams, and had some success. And I want to say that, but this brother was the same age I am. Started out, together. A hard soldier in the Nation of Islam under Minister Louis Farrakhan, a great speaker. This brother could speak, brother, with the best of them. And as you can see, very good looking. Idris Mahmoud, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and bless your grave with light. Yeah. Bless your grave with space, and he grant you Jannah, grant you the highest level of paradise. Idris Mahmoud, dead at the age of 65. All right, that ends our show for today. Thank you, Art Mobley, for joining us in this very timely discussion. I think we covered a few bases. Next week, we will have Imad Al-Turk from the International Museum of Muslim Cultures on the Palestinian issue, connecting the Palestinian struggle to the African liberation struggle will be the topic of discussion. And it was Imad who chose that, the Palestinian. And in addition to that, we'll reach out to Sahar Aziz to see if we can get her on to talk about Islamophobia around the issues of hate crimes. Again, you listen to the Muslim Street. For my co-host, Art Mobley, Darfur 23, founding member of the National Association of Black Journalists, myself, Malik Aziz. We'll see you next week. Salam alaikum.